This Week in Agribusiness, serving America's most essential industry, is brought to you by Case IH.
Coming up on This Week in Agribusiness, congressional leaders continue to work on a farm bill. Hello, everyone. Thanks for joining us for This Week in Agribusiness. I'm Mike Pearson in the studio this week, but we will hear from Max Armstrong in just a bit. Before we do, however, our man in Washington, Patrick Haggerty, had a chance to speak with House Ag Committee Chairman G.T. Thompson about strengthening this year's farm bill.
I do think there's some opportunities to strengthen. 80% of what we spent on agriculture since the 2018 Farm Bill was in the form of ad hoc. It was outside the Farm Bill scope, which comes with uncertainty, especially for that part of that ad hoc that was for weather related. And so it'd be great if we could incorporate the ad hoc spending, at least some of that was focused on disaster relief. And I'm thankful that we do disaster relief, but around here it takes an act of Congress. So the uncertainty, the timing, I'm pretty certain there's some farmers out of business till the check shows up. And if we could incorporate some of that into crop insurance, it would provide certainty, it would provide timeliness. I think it would actually could reduce what we spend, right? Because you do disaster relief in sometimes in a very emotional mode or panic mode sometimes. We don't do that with the Farm Bill. We're very thoughtful with what we put together. And so I think we could actually help a lot of farmers, but maybe do it a little more efficiently and save some money if we incorporate that into crop insurance.
How about the conservation title? Which way do you see that going?
We did something transformational at the end of 2022, and that was the Sustains Act. That was my legislation. We passed unanimously out of committee, and at the end of December we got it through the Senate, and President Biden signed it into law, and it creates a public-private partnership. So the corporations, businesses, individuals of all sizes that would like to get their sustainability credentials or climate credentials or green whatever they want to call it that their customer base likes, all they have to do is write a check to USDA. And those monies, those additional monies, can be used to fund more conservation programs. And we have a need for it. I mean, we get one example, the EQIP at the end of 2020, we fully funded what we had, and we fully spent what we had provided, a significant amount of money. But at the end of the day, when 2020 closed, we still had over 80,000 contracts that we couldn't fund because the money had been exhausted. I'm really excited about the Sustains Act and what this will do, in addition to what we do in terms of our authorization appropriations within the conservation title.
Thanks to Patrick Haggerty for sending in that interview. But the Farm Bill isn't the only big piece of legislation under discussion in Washington, D.C. We've also had biofuels come under the focus of D.C. quite a bit over the past 2 years and finally saw some action. Joining us now to talk about these recent developments is Jeff Cooper, serving as president and CEO of the Renewable Fuels Association. Jeff, it sounds like consumers will have more fuel choice this summer. Is that right?
That's right, Mike. We got good news out of Washington, D.C. at the end of April, and that news is that the Environmental Protection Agency is once again going to allow the continued sales of E15 through the summer months of 2023. You might recall that last year the Biden administration issued emergency waivers to allow year-round sales of E15. They're taking that same action again this year, really in an effort to extend fuel supplies to help keep prices lower. We all know that E15 is selling for 25 or 30 cents lower per gallon than E10. So it is offering savings to consumers at a period of high gas prices. Now, we don't have the record high gas prices that we had last summer, but they are still quite elevated in many parts of the country. So this initiative by EPA is going to help put downward pressure on fuel prices for consumers who have access to E15. And it also is better for the environment. It reduces greenhouse gas emissions, as well as those other pollutants that lead to air quality problems and smog. So it seemed like a no-brainer to us, but we were glad to see EPA and the administration take this action at the end of April.
And it should also be a benefit for corn farmers as we're putting more biofuels into fuel tanks. Jeff, how is the industry prepared after 2 years of high costs?
Yeah, that's right. This is great news for corn growers. It keeps an expanding market open, and it keeps it in expansion mode when we talk about E15. The ethanol industry is certainly ready to continue meeting that expanded demand for ethanol consumption domestically. We are ready to grind more corn into more gallons of ethanol. Yes, we've been facing high input costs the last few years with elevated corn prices and higher prices for other inputs into the process, whether that's natural gas or electricity or enzymes or yeast. But because the values for ethanol and the co-products we're making, the animal feed and corn oil, all those values are higher as well. And so the industry is in really good health right now financially. We have seen strong economic performance, strong margins the last few years, and that's good for everybody, right? I mean, the farmers are getting a good price for their corn. We've continued to see that impact of an ethanol plant on local basis. That's great for the farmers in the area, and our industry has been able to manage those higher input costs quite effectively the last few years. And like I said, we're in the mode to continue that expansion and continue pushing E15 further into the marketplace this summer.
Well, I'm glad you brought that up. So E15, emergency use authorized over the summer. Jeff, what's the long-term access to E15 look like, and what would the industry like to see?
Yeah, great question. This is an emergency waiver. We had an emergency waiver last year because of the war in Ukraine and the situation that's causing in global energy markets. We're not going to have an emergency every spring. And so we do need to get to a permanent resolution on the year-round E15 issue. There is legislation that's been introduced in both chambers of Congress. We strongly support that legislation. We are working with our friends in Congress to find any opportunity to move that bill forward and get it across the goal line before the end of this year, so we're not facing this same hurdle and challenge next spring.
All right, keep an eye on those congressional discussions, folks. Biofuels could use the attention. Thanks to Jeff Cooper, President and CEO of the Renewable Fuels Association. Jeff, thanks for joining us this week. This portion of This Week in Agribusiness is brought to you by Firestone Ag. The Firestone Ag Dealer Network offers you the support, inventory, and resources you need. Visit firestoneag.com to find your local certified dealer. We're talking markets this week with Joe Camp, an analyst with Comstock Investments. And Joe, the calendar has turned to May. Farmers are running in the field. How's the trade interpreting the state of play across the Corn Belt?
No real concern developing over what we're seeing in terms of planting progress, but we know, as always, it's variable. We talked to farmers in Indiana or Ohio, and they're just getting going. It's been cold. It's been soggy in areas. Of course, that's the complete opposite of what we hear when we talk to those in the West, and the Southwest still very dry. Same in the Northwest too, and cold. And so we saw that recently in the crop progress numbers, those planting updates letting us know that a state like Illinois, well ahead of an average pace, but those in North Dakota recently just 1% planted on corn and 0% registered on soybeans. So it's something that we're still monitoring closely, but without any real concern showing up in the market yet.
We're not seeing that slow planting pace in the Dakotas switch acres this year yet, are we?
It doesn't seem like it is yet, but that's something we're going to get really close to as we approach these last planting dates. And if last year was any indication, there will be more willingness to go to prevent plant. It was North Dakota that led the way on that last year, and there could be more of that again this season.
Joe, we've got planting happening up here, but of course in South America, their corn is pollinating there in the gut slot of that growing season. How does that crop look?
Right, very different in the southern hemisphere where they're just finishing the soybean harvest and yes, getting close to the next second crop or safrinha corn harvest coming here in about 30 days. It's a big country too, so we'll get that starting up north and rolling down in the south. Really favorable conditions up in the big producing areas like Mato Grosso, less so in the south, and that would be areas that are next to Argentina, and we know how dry they've been, a historic drought by all accounts there in Argentina. So it is a mixed bag, but ultimately a crop that should produce a record this year to go along with that bumper soybean crop. It's a product of more acres coming in, but also not the same type of overall drought conditions that they suffered in the last 2 years.
How much concern should American farmers have for that big Brazilian safrinha crop, Joe? We already had China make a pretty massive cancellation this past week.
China's a big deal when we talk about their corn demand, knowing that they had recently opened these new connections with Brazil as a way to hedge their bets on supply lost out of Ukraine. And they have been buying from Brazil. But what we know too is that Currently, they're busy in the soybean export business. It won't be until, again, 30 days or so where that second crop corn starts to fill the pipeline for export. And then we should see some of that demand shift to Brazil. But we know buyers like China still want the high quality, highly reliable corn exports out of the U.S. And so these recent cancellations are just a part of what should be an overall still pretty strong business in the months ahead.
All right, we'll continue to watch that and talk about what's coming in the broader market with Joe Camp of Comstock Investments when we return. This portion of This Week in Agribusiness is brought to you by Firestone Ag. Harvey Firestone invented the first pneumatic farm tire, forever changing what it means to farm hard. Visit firestoneag.com to learn more about this history and tire solutions for today. We're talking markets with Joe Camp, an analyst with Comstock Investments. And Joe, while we don't have a lot of market news to digest right now, there is a lot of broad economic news for the trade to digest. And let's talk about inflation. That's still a bit of a boogeyman out there, isn't it?
It is that we've had this in this recent CPI Consumer Price Index update, the annualized inflation rate called just under 5%. And this is ongoing from several months in a row, now years, that we've suffered from high inflation. And we know about the central bank's job in trying to deflate that. And with higher interest rates, it's caused some trouble for the economy here. We've seen that come into play recently with some of the bank failures and also with the coming expectation for recession. And if there's any worry in general about the ag market going forward, we can be bullish about the fundamentals still, I feel like, about supply and demand. But at the end of the day, if there's some outside economy trouble and that spills over and creates a risk-off mode, that's going to be something we've got to watch out for this summer.
But we haven't seen that develop as of yet. Is that right, Joe?
For now, we still see most financial markets supported by what we see in terms of a strong labor market, and generally that we've got the best of the worst in terms of our economy, our dollar supporting our markets better than a lot of other countries around the world.
Joe, and if we're trying to think of consumer health, if we look at the meat case, it certainly would appear that the consumer has capital driving these beef values up to record levels. Do you expect that to continue?
Absolutely. The beef demand in particular has been so resilient even at these record levels, and I think that bodes well still for the overall cattle complex going forward these next several months. We know about the fundamentals and how bullish they've been with the cow herd liquidation, and frankly that's occurred a lot longer than we expected, and so it puts this bottoming out of beef production back further into this summer, and I think does support those higher prices, with again the caveat knowing that if there's economic troubles that could hurt demand.
As you think about economic troubles from Comstock's perspective, Joe, do you envision a recession coming later this year?
I think we will likely have a soft recession, even if it's just a technical one that would maybe follow from, say, 2 quarters in a row of negative GDP growth. And what we're seeing is that's a direct result of the central bank's action to slow the economy down. It's what they're looking for, trying to get a recession in a big way to cool that inflation rate. But I don't think it's overall something yet that we're overly concerned about in terms of being a big weight on the commodities or the grains going forward.
Joe, before we let you go, interest rates. Do you think the Fed is going to hold firm on raising them further for a while?
Looks like they're signaling that they are ready to pause after an unprecedented move up. We're now above 5%, back to where we were in 2006, right before that last big recession. So that would be the concern, and likely that they will pause from here.
All right. Joe Camp, analyst with Comstock Investments, thanks for joining us this week.
Thanks so much.
Colby Ag Tech is brought to you by Copperhead Ag Products. Visit copperheadag.com for more information. Agriculture technology continues to advance by leaps and bounds, and our friend Chad Colby keeps us up to speed. Most of this technology is in the sky or it's in the tractor cab, but now technology comes to soil.
It's truly amazing to see just how far technology has come. I've been working on a story we started last fall about a new way to look into the analytics and the data from your soil samples.
Pattern Ag is a predictive analytics soil company focused on soil biology. We identify hidden yield robbers like pests, pathogens, diseases, and nutrient aspects. Today we're going to work with our local grower, pull some cores in his field, and then work on delivering those results back with him to uncover some of these hidden yield robbing issues. The results that we're going to be looking at today fall under both crop protection and biofertility. So in the crop protection tab, we're going to look for specific pests and pathogens which are causing yield loss, and things that you can do, or you can make input additions or subtractions to help out there. So we're targeting specific corn and soybean. So today we'll kind of just go through the results here. So this field was in corn this past year and going to beans, correct?
Correct.
The thing I found interesting about this data set is it's something completely different. Kyle went on to some of the diseases and potential risks that Randy could be facing in 2023.
Soybean stem canker, brown stem rot, white mold. So, out of all the different categories we've looked at today, brown stem rot is the one that's, lighting up as high risk for you. So, valuable information for you going into planting season to work with your seed dealer. Really the biggest thing there is just, a variety that's going to be, a stronger field tolerance towards that. Then again, that maybe potential, higher level of seed treatment, looking at some fungicides later in the season, just, knowing that inoculum is there, that's, because it is high risk, we're not saying, it's going to show its head.
Right, but it's a management thing.
Correct.
I mean, like the one thing it's showing there that maybe we ought to be throwing an inoculant on our beans. Well, if that gives me a 5-bushel return, that's huge on a scenario that normally you wouldn't think that you would need to put an inoculant on soybeans.
Yeah, and that's one that I found really interesting, is that most people don't think about it anymore. It's kind of let's call it like a lost practice, but it's a relatively cheap thing that you can do.
Right. Normally it's this field's been corn on corn for 10 years. If we're going to go back to beans, we should throw an inoculant on it.
Right.
It's it's something that as a standard practice you would not think that it needs to be included.
It's hard to not be real excited about technology like Pattern Ag is offering. Great new insights to your soil on your farm. For This Week in Agribusiness, I'm Chad Colby.
Thank you, Chad, for that update. It's incredible what technology can bring to soil health. And folks, stay with us. We'll have more coming with Greg Sollier's forecast when This Week in Agribusiness returns.
Welcome back to This Week in Agribusiness. Well, with the help of the folks at Pivot Bio, each week we scan America and zero in on one state's agriculture.
That's right. We focus on the diversity therein, Max.
Here we go to Montana this week, where there is much to be known about the agriculture business.
The United States of America can be very different from one state to another, but one thing every state has in common is agriculture.
Hey everyone, I'm Charlie Behrens and welcome to the Agricultural States of America. We're going to test your knowledge about the agriculture of different states and hopefully give you a bit of appreciation for all the great things that farmers are producing across America. Today we're heading to Montana to see what farming looks like in Big Sky country. Now when you think of Montana, you probably think of the tourist destinations like Yellowstone, Glacier National Park, or the Continental Divide. But believe it or not, Montana's largest industry is agriculture, which contributes over $5 billion to the economy every single year. In other words, when it comes to the economy, you could call agriculture Montana's Old Faithful.
Old Faithful is in Wyoming.
Never mind. So what are they farming, you ask? I'll tell you. Cattle and calves lead the state's agriculture sector. At any given time, there are approximately 2.6 million head of beef cattle in Montana. That's approximately 3 cows to every 1 person, which equates to a whole lot of moolah. See what I did there? Moolah.
Stick to the script.
I'll keep going, sure. Most of the crops grown in Montana are considered dryland crops. Coming in at number 1 is wheat. Farmers produce enough wheat to make Montana rank 4th nationally in overall production and 3rd in certified organic wheat. Wheat is grown in almost every county in the state, but the largest production area is called the Golden Triangle area, located in Montana's north central region. And in addition to wheat, Montana grows hay and alfalfa to support the cattle industry. They also grow plenty of barley, which in tandem with the wheat has helped grow Montana's craft brewery industry. Now, before Prohibition, you know, that time in American history when everyone stopped drinking, there actually used to be a local brewery in every small town in Montana. Luckily, the state seems to be trending toward that direction again, so cheers to that. Now, all that said, specialty crops like hops prefer warmer, wetter climate. So in response to the big craft brewery demand, growers in Montana have found creative ways to grow hops profitably. Today, the state has over 80 licensed breweries, making Montana one of the biggest importers of beanies and beard balm. Charlie, that is judgmental of brewers. They do not all have beards. They do not all have beanies. Most of them do, though. Now, when you think of Montana agriculture, do you ever think of pulses? No, I'm not talking about the pulse you check when you're out of beer. I'm talking about the other meaning for pulse, which is a fancy catch-all word for edible dry peas, beans, lentils, and chickpeas. They fall under the legume family, but the word pulse specifically refers to legumes that are grown and harvested for their dry seed and grown as food. And Montana grows them all, especially lentils. In fact, Montana plants 670,000 acres of lentils each year, making it the top lentil-producing state that's responsible for 40% of our nation's lentil supply. And because of it, our soups have never tasted better. And now it is time for the lentil lightning round about the legume we love. Which of the following is true about lentils? Lentils are one of the healthiest foods in the world. They can be black, yellow, green, brown, red, and orange. They originated in Central Asia. They are the oldest pulse crop known to man and one of the earliest domesticated crops. They were found in the tomb of the ancient Egyptians in 2400 BC. Optical lenses are named after the Latin word for them. If you just said all of the above, congratulations. You should be hosting the show. And if you didn't know, well, now you know. But don't thank me, just tip your cowboy hat to the great state of Montana. All right, that's all we have time for now, but you can go to pivotbio.com/AG states and click on the show icon to explore more about the agriculture of your favorite states and test your knowledge to win great prizes and more. All right, we'll see you next time on the Agricultural States of America.
It's a very colorful description of the agriculture of Montana. Thanks to Charlie Behrens for that. You can see more, and you can also try to get some prizes at pivotbio.com/agstates. My first trip through Montana was in a caboose. You know, that was the car they used to have on the back of the train?
Yes.
I hopped a ride on the Burlington Northern Railroad. It was before they merged with the Santa Fe.
Now, when you say hopped a ride, Max, were you supposed to be in that caboose?
Yes. There was a cameraman along with me. And it was just a beautiful trip. I mean, you really got to see the diversity of the landscape of that state that is so beautiful.
It truly is, Max. It's one of my favorite flights in the world is to fly into the Billings, Montana airport. If you've never made that trip, the airport is up on a plateau, several hundred feet, maybe 1,000 feet above the city of Billings itself. And Max, it takes my breath away every time I get the opportunity to fly into that town.
It reminds you of other tight-in airports. Hong Kong's airport used to be that way. I think maybe they have a new one now. But when you're coming in among other obstacles, buildings, natural landscape structures, you wonder, okay, how's this going to turn out?
Yes, and it's a reminder just to how hard life can be out there in the high plains. You see those high winds and the snowfall, Max? They're working hard on those farms and ranches.
The movie makers discovered the state long ago.
That's true.
We'll feature another state next week here on Ag States of America, brought to you by the folks at Pivot Bio. There's more coming up. Stay with us here. This Week in Agribusiness, serving America's most essential industry, is brought to you by Case IH.
Welcome back to This Week in Agribusiness. Each Monday, the USDA reminds us that in the month of May, American farmers are working hard to get that crop in the ground. And while that is a very important task, it's not one that should put other things on the back burner. Max Armstrong joins us next with a reminder that some other things are important in May as well.
Mike, I believe this is the third year in a row that in the month of May we've devoted attention to rural mental health awareness month in the month of May. And a few months back we talked with Jeff Winton, who started this nonprofit called Rural Minds. And among the groups working with Rural Minds is Curious Plot, a Minneapolis-based advertising, public relations, management consulting agency. And the CEO of Curious Plot joins us this weekend. Lori Fleck, it's great to have you on This Week in Agribusiness with us. Thank you.
Thank you, Max. Glad to be here.
You know, over the months that you've been working with Rural Minds, I can imagine there have been some recurring themes that have come back time and again. Are there some of those that you think you should stress in this visit?
Oh, thank you for bringing that up because it really is a crisis. And it's a crisis because there's actually silent victims when it's attached to mental health and the stigma of mental health. First of all, people are actually afraid to host the conversation, not only in urban areas, but also in rural areas. And in fact, as you know, and you've reported, Max, the statistics of suicide and need for resources in rural America is 65, I think, percent greater, I think, according to the latest survey, for those in rural America, because they actually need those resources. They lack broadband and access to the care that they need. And I think that is the goal and the mission of Rural Minds, is to make sure that they have access that they need to the help and support.
You know, this being Mother's Day weekend, I got to thinking about the fact that we so often talk about the farmer's mental health challenges, and we talk about him and his efforts and his labors, when in fact, of course, the farm woman, the farm mom, in so many instances has they would have their own set of challenges. It strikes me that these folks are trying to keep all the plates spinning at one time, and we need to think about the burden they carry too, do we not?
Oh, most definitely. In fact, even being an employer supporting clients passionate about rural America, we've got a lot of team members that actually come from rural America, and a lot of them are women, and they're working mothers and supporting the family operation as well. So they're juggling a lot. And with that stress comes the need for mental health support and resources to actually support all of their efforts, taking care of the family and supporting all the efforts on the farm.
The farm mom has to keep it all held together, it strikes me. I know how it works at this place, that there's one person who really makes everything happen and is the tie that binds, and that's not Max. And where do you turn? You know, sometimes the spouse might be afraid, Lori, to bring up the subject. You know, that might be that third rail that's really going to set her off. Can you go to a friend? What's the best approach to take here?
Oh, you know what? That is a great comment, because the stigma of associated with mental health is still that people don't want to bring it up or host the conversation. And I would encourage anybody who just has questions and are looking for resources to go to ruralminds.org. And there is a list of resources, tips and tools about how to start the conversation and where to go for that additional support. So again, it's ruralminds.org, and I would encourage you to take a look at the support provided there.
And sometimes in local communities, maybe through the extension office or a minister, a pastor, a priest, there can be somebody there who can lend a hand, right?
Oh, most definitely. And again, it's about reaching out and not being afraid to have the conversation. And, you know, Max, it's also about looking for those signs too. When somebody actually starts to go more introvert, not participating in the things that they used to, some of those change in patterns that you need to look for. And so that you can actually then start to find the support that that individual needs, much like through the resources that you were talking about.
You know, as we began this conversation, I thought of at least two instances of moms I knew that we lost too early because of the burden that they were carrying. So I think it's just a great point to bring up this Mother's Day weekend for those who carry such a load, indeed, in rural America. Give us that website one more time, if you would, Lori.
Sure, Max. It's ruralminds.org.
Thank you so much, Lori. We appreciate you sharing time here with us this weekend. Lori Fleck, Chief Executive Officer of Curious Plot. Greg Solier now brings us his farm weather forecast for the week ahead, presented by Pivot BioProven 40. Predictable, productive, weatherproof. Turn to a better nitrogen. Turn to Pivot Bio Proven 40. Learn more at pivotbio.com.
Well, now it's time to turn our focus to the weather. Meteorologist Greg Solier joins us here. And Greg, it has been an active pattern in the Pacific Northwest this spring. Is that going to moderate at all?
Yeah, kind of quieting down. We had about 2.5, 3 weeks ago a spell of some heat into the western states, and that warm ridge expected to and forecast to kind of build northward into this part of the country. So plenty of opportunity to put a wrap on it with planting operations, Rogue River Basin, Willamette Valley, and what's in the ground, some pretty decent crop growth and development anticipated. And last week's rainfall in this corridor, 1 to as much as 3 inches of great benefit to some of the drought-ridden areas, particularly across areas of Nebraska, of course north across North Dakota, and points out of the east. Very limited access to planting operations thus far. I think corn was just in single-digit ranges complete. So maybe some opportunities as the week wears on. Here's a system in through the eastern Pacific. Its eastern advance will be virtually nil with maybe a stray shower into western Washington state late in the week. Plenty of opportunity for outdoor work and some runoff as well off the northern and central Rockies and the Cascades. Warm, dry weather across the northern plains too, with just a stray shower as you venture down into parts of Colorado. That is it for moisture in the Pacific Northwest. Meanwhile, over the southwestern parts of the country, again, kind of an onshore flow this time of the year. That means that low cloud and fog stuff around the Bay Area. Any shower activity is maybe the result of daytime heating with a kind of a segment of the jet stream out of the Rio Grande. A couple of showers and thunderstorms there. There's warmth back into the plains coming off the rains of last week. Nebraska and Kansas, get out there and inspect some of those pasture lands. Hopefully a little green up with the rains of late, but again, not much going on moisture-wise. Southwest flow up aloft could spark a shower thunderstorm in the Four Corners. Pretty quiet weather picture for the valleys of California, and it's almost an early summer feel, minus humidity from Nebraska southward through Kansas and Oklahoma later in the week.
Well, Greg, those Corn Belt farmers have been working hard to get the crop in the ground. Does it look like next week might give them some more opportunity?
Yeah, exactly, and especially through some of those northern reaches that have been in delay mode because of snow melt, late season snow through the northern Great Lakes region, and recent rains. And so the jet stream winds with time will come in from the north and northwest. And yeah, we made some significant inroads to some of the dry areas through Illinois. Different story, central Missouri, areas of the western Corn Belt had been worsening prior to last week's rainfall, but unfortunately not much going on this week. Double-edged sword, you get opportunities for field work and planting in many areas. Just a stray shower thunderstorm chance later in the week. I-70 on southward. Warm, dry weather where we need it through the upper Midwest and points on westward. There may be a cool down in temperature readings, may lose some of the soil warmth, but in any event, opportunities to play catch up here. We're keeping an eye on the drought through Missouri and maybe some progress out there coming off last week's rainfall west of the Missouri. Meanwhile, over the deep south and southeastern part of the country, again, an upper system across parts of the southwest may trigger an afternoon shower thunderstorm. Cooler, drier air follows in behind this wet weather system, and there will be significant early to midweek rains for the Delta, deep south and southeastern sections of the country. With time, maybe a weak upper system may trigger a stray shower thunderstorm, inconsequential to the dry areas in the areas of central Missouri. Showers and thunderstorms kind of scattered from the Delta onto the east. Otherwise, plenty of opportunity for outdoor work there, Mike, across the southern plains later in the week.
East Coast farmers, Greg, what should they expect this next week?
A pretty busy weather pattern of late, including, of course, a couple of weeks ago, late season snow, but it's high pressure in control. And there, too, expectations from about the nation's capital on southward, where most of the wet weather will play on out. Plenty of opportunity for outdoor work here. The eastern Corn Belt as well, and not much going on up to the north. So good news all around with Springfield work and planting operations. As the week wears on, we'll drive a northwest to southeast upper air flow. It's possible some frost and freeze here through parts of northern New England, a couple of showers for southern New England, but again, outside of the drop-off in temperature readings, should be opportunities for outdoor work and additional planting operations across the Midwest, and more so as you venture into the northern complex and points back to the west. Plenty of humidity in the air and plenty of shower and thunderstorm business as well for the Carolinas, southeastern states down through Texas, the Gulf Coast area, and of late some rain across parts of Florida. That will be expanding as the showers and thunderstorms move on here through later in the week. Portions of the time frame, cooler, drier air over the southeastern states. A couple of showers still lingering into parts of eastern Texas.
Greg Solier is back with his extended farm weather forecast for the country, presented by Pivot Bio Proven 40. Predictable, productive, weatherproof. Turn to a better nitrogen. Turn to Pivot Bio Proven 40. Learn more at pivotbio.com.
Well, we're taking a look at the forecast with meteorologist Greg Solier. And Greg, you mentioned there could be some opportunity for rainfall this next week. Who's going to get what?
Well, it'll be in the southern plains areas. Texas has actually seen some improvement to the drought. Eastern areas, more to come there. No issues regarding dryness and drought. Delta and southeastern part of the country. Yeah, we've got concerns here through central parts of Missouri. Still a couple of dry areas through Illinois. Later in the week, maybe 30-40% coverage moisture at 1/4 to 1/2 inch in this particular corridor. So not drought ending or busting whatsoever. Recent rains have certainly shown improvement here to pasture lands, another 1/4 to 1/2 inch for parts of the central plains. But remember, it's an El Nino setup. Get deeper into that. A tendency for more dryness here in parts of the western Corn Belt too. Good coverage over the Carolinas, parts of the southwestern states, none to speak of, and through California as well as the Pacific Northwest.
Greg, the week of May 22nd, what do you anticipate temperature-wise?
From a temperature standpoint here, a little on the cooler side here. We'll lose some warmth into the soils and some slower growth, development, and emergence across a good part of the Corn Belt locales. Moisture requirements will ease a little bit off the drought issues, of course. Central and southern plains, some warmth over Dixie down through Florida and parts of the Pacific West. Still got that trough position across the middle part of the country, but with frontal boundaries stuck in this particular corridor, no real advance on moisture, just normal across the Midwest. Dry, good news for the upper Midwest. And looky here, some late season moisture. Valleys of California, southwestern states, that will be thunderstorm activity down across Dixie and the southeastern sections of the country too.
Well, Greg, what do you anticipate that first full week of June?
Well, coming off that Memorial Day weekend, we get more of a progressive weather pattern here, some ridging over the middle part of the country, a bit of warmth here over the western sections of the U.S. into the northern plains, nothing out of control. Some cool air for the eastern part of the country, the jet stream still in from the north and west, and so we serve up this particular setup. Some opportunities for field work and planting still yet to go through the Great Lakes region. Normal precip, Great Plains of the southeastern parts of the Corn Belt, a little above down through Florida. Good news with dryness from out there, and Texas into the southwestern parts of the country, mainly afternoon thunderstorm activity there.
What do you see for the temperatures the week after June 5th?
I begin to get some warmth and some heat ramped up over the deep south, the southeastern part of the country, but nothing out of control either. That still pushes readings up close to the 90-degree mark to about the I-70 corridor. Still a delightful go over for any late season field work near the Canadian border, northern plains. Otherwise, much of the country from California throughout the heartland, throughout the central Corn Belt into northern New England, looking at temperatures just about seasonal norms. From a moisture standpoint, probably by this time into that first week to 10 days of the month of June, time for a little bit of moisture, and we'll get it across the Dakotas, much of the Corn Belt locales, into the Ohio Valley, the northeast of New England, normal precip down through Florida, drying out into the southern plains.
Next on This Week in Agribusiness, it's Max's Tractor Shed, spotlighting another great American tractor.
And Max's Tractor Shed this weekend, it's a Centaur tractor. And some of you are saying, what's that? What kind? Max's Tractor Shed is brought to you by Mystic Lubricants. Mystic Lubricants, like you producers, are made to make it last. Well, I have to admit, I'm drawn back to this place time after time like a moth drawn to a light. The American Tractor Museum at Perryville, Missouri. Every time I go there, I see something that I have not seen before. And on my last visit a few days ago, I saw this Centaur tractor. It was made by the Centaur Tractor Company in Greenwich, Ohio in 1935. It's a Model KV. It's an orchard tractor, as you can see by looking at the fenders. It has a 20-horsepower, 4-cylinder Leroy engine and a top speed of 25 miles an hour. That would be flying through the orchard, wouldn't it? It's a rare tractor, one of only 6 known to be in existence. The Centaur tractor that you'll see at the American Tractor Museum, by the way, it's easy to get there. It's south of St. Louis, a little more than an hour, north of Cape Girardeau, just off Interstate 55, about 3 miles off of I-55 on Main Street in Perryville. You can go to their website and see the schedule when they're open, Monday through Friday, every month, and I think they're open 2 Saturdays each month as well. You can see all of the information at AmericanTractorMuseum.com. This guy has information for us each and every week. Mark Stock from Big Iron Auctions.
Well, hello, Max. As planters are still moving across the country, we're still seeing record prices. A 1998 John Deere 9100 four-wheel drive tractor with only 699 hours sells for a record price of $157,000. 240 bids on this tractor as the Clifford Bizik retirement sale took place in Timken, Kansas last week on BigIron.com. Other high-selling prices include a 2015 Case IH 9240 four-wheel drive combine selling for Fallon Farms from Sherman, Texas, $156,250 for a combine with 1,864 engine hours. Brian Hawkswell Trucking out of McCook, Nebraska will sell a 2020 Peterbilt 389 semi-truck. It's got a 2015, 2013, and 2007 Peterbilts as well, plus two 2020 BTR 40-foot chain bottom trailers. Patrick Swoboda retirement sale by Madrid, Nebraska features 52 items. John Deere 8345R mechanical front tractor, John Deere DR24 stackfold 24 row 30 precision planter, and a John Deere 8530 mechanical front. We're now scheduling land and machinery auctions for August and September. Check it all out on SullivanAuctioneers.com and watch the BigIron.com auction on Wednesday with a lot of quality equipment.
Our FFA Chapter Tribute is brought to you by Pioneer, developing new generations of seed innovations for new generations of farmers. Pioneer, what's next happens here. We're meeting that next generation of ag leader this week. We're meeting Jenna Kelsey. She serves as the 2022-2023 Southern Region State Vice President for Indiana. And Kelsey, thanks for joining us this week.
Thank you for having me.
There's a lot to offer in FFA, and you took advantage of some leadership opportunities. Can you fill us in on how that helped you grow?
Absolutely. So I joined FFA in 7th grade, and I was really nervous, really shy. And FFA really allowed me to grow, especially in my confidence. And as I grew in FFA, I also grew in my want to pursue leadership opportunities. So I started out as just a member and then moved to chapter vice president, then moved to chapter president, and then took on a district role as district president, and eventually led me right here as an Indiana FFA state officer. So I would definitely say the biggest thing that FFA gave me was confidence.
That's fantastic. And that confidence to serve at the state level is pretty impressive. Jenna, this year, during your year of service, what are you most excited about?
Well, right now, my teammates and I are really getting ready for state convention. So that would be a big bucket list item, I guess. That's when we officially retire, you might say. So we're super excited for that. It's our biggest event of the year, and we have over 2,000 to 3,000 FFA members all gathering at Purdue University. So we're super excited to be back there and excited for that in June.
Well, I love to hear your passion. Jenna, is agriculture a field you hope to have a career in?
Absolutely. Next year, I will be going to Purdue University for ag economics. I definitely see myself in a career in agriculture, and I can't wait to see where I end up after college.
Well, that is fantastic. Jenna Kelsey serving as the Southern State Region Vice President for the Indiana FFA. Thank you so much for joining us here this week.
Thank you.
Mental health and planting aren't the only things we celebrate in May. Of course, it's also Mother's Day. And if you haven't bought your present yet, you better go do it now, because a lot of farms across this country would not be able to operate without those hardworking farm moms, and we wanted to say thank you.
I'm Cece Anderson from Bowling Green, Ohio, and I love being a farm mom because through the challenges, the struggles, the highs and the lows, our family gets to celebrate all that is production agriculture and the joy it brings our family together. And they get to watch their mom carrying out her dreams, making cool things happen in her hometown.
I'm Rachel Howe from Witt, Illinois. I love being a farm mom because seeing our kids work on our multi-generational farm makes my heart happy.
I am Sarah from Moscow, Ohio. My favorite thing about being a farm mom is taking my kids with me on the ranch to care for our animals together.
I'm Rose Hartshoe from Sycamore, Ohio. I couldn't imagine a better place to raise my kids than on the farm. They learn hard work, dedication, responsibility, and so many other values. I'm proud to be a farm mom.
I'm Becky Richardson.
I'm from Philadelphia, Tennessee, and I love being a farm mom because it is a family affair. Each day I have the opportunity to work alongside my husband and our 3 sons, and now with 3 grandchildren coming along, it makes being a farm mom even more special.
I'm Jennifer Moore from Dresden, Tennessee, and I like being a farm mom because I get to do the things I love with the people I love each and every day.
Whether I'm in the field helping to get the crop in, or I'm out in the pie shop with my family is who I choose to spend Mother's Day with. But you can guarantee that there's going to be a good piece of pie involved.
Hi, I'm Jamie Marks from Maple Park, Illinois, where we raise cattle, corn, soybeans, and wheat. I have many farm mom jobs around the farm, from assisting in the fields, working cattle, and also many office tasks. But the thing I like most about being a farm mom is that my children get to grow up and be raised on our family farm. I love to teach them to work hard, respect for both the land and the animals are all very important. It's truly the best job I've ever had. I want to wish all moms out there a very happy Mother's Day.
From the whole team of us here at This Week in Agribusiness, happy Mother's Day to all the moms out there watching. Thanks for helping keep us in line. We certainly appreciate it. And tune in next week. We'll have more updates on how this crop is coming across the United States and what to watch out of South America. Join us same time, same place, right here for more This Week in Agribusiness.
This Week in Agribusiness is brought to you by Case IH. This Week in Agribusiness is produced by Omax Communication in association with 22 Creative Group. We invite you to visit us online at agbizweek.com.